Good morning, Mrs. Dudley here. I am at Gorman Heritage Farm with my friend Nicole. We are going to take a little bit of a walk around the farm and check on some of the animals. The animals and the plants here still need care, even while we're all sheltering at home. So this is an opportunity for us to get out, get a little vitamin D, and just kind of find out what's going on at the farm right now. Some of you guys might recognize where we're going today because you've been here for intercession. If you haven't been to Gorman Heritage Farm, then it's definitely a spot you're going to want to visit when some of those restrictions lift. And Nicole has been on our advisory committee for several years. She's really been a wonderful champion for our program. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thanks, Mary. I'm the Director of Education here at Gorman Heritage Farm, and the farm is kind of unique in that we are a farm, so we raise food, but we also have a mission to educate. So we're always trying to find ways to help people, whether it's school kids, elementary school, high school age, or families, or scouts, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, learn about agriculture and food production and plants and animals. So that's my job, is the education piece. But I do also, especially during this time, help care for some of our animals and plants. I helped to plant potatoes. We did it. It was a huge job. We got it done. So we're all kind of pitching in a different way during this time here at the farm to make sure that all of the crops are grown and that the animals are well cared for.
Nice. And some of us did research on victory gardens.
Oh, yeah.
And how they're kind of making a resurgence right now. So if some of you at home are interested in starting gardens, then Nicole's definitely going to be someone that we can work with to answer all of your questions.
For sure.
All right, let's go out for a walk.
All right, let's go.
All right, Nicole, tell us what we're looking at over here.
So this brown stretch right here is the potato field. We're really proud of the fact that everyone pulled together and planted this entire field in one day, in like 2 giant chunks of time, all standing 6 feet apart and practicing social distancing and using our own tools.
Awesome.
So that was pretty exciting. And then to the right of the potato field are the chicken tractors for the broiler chickens. So those are meat birds. And then to the left of the potato field is a cover crop of winter rye. So the rye will be harvested. We'll sell the rye grain. Like you could grind it up and make rye bread, for example. But we don't do that here. We sell the grains, and then the stalk that the plant makes is used as straw for our animals. We bale it up into those big rectangles, and we keep it and use it in the winter time to help them stay warm and comfortable, like for bedding.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sheep, 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 sheep. Sheep, 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 sheep. Eddie! Come on, sheep.
So who you got there, Nicole?
This is Eddie. He's a miniature Zebu Cow, and we use him for our education programs. He is much, much smaller than a typical cow would be. He's full size. He won't get any bigger. He is 3 years old, and he's a really good size to use when we're introducing him to kids. So he wears a little halter, and we can walk him on his lead rope around and help kids understand what the role of cows can be on the farm. And Eddie's role is to work in education. He also deposits manure, which is the fancy farm word for poop, and it is like a form of fertilizer. So it's really good for helping to keep our pastures fertilized, and we save that manure and age it before it goes on the crop fields as well.
That's great.
Yeah, so he is not a cow for eating, although we do have 2 beef cattle that we're raising. Not sure if we're going to be able to see them today because sometimes they're in pastures that are really far away. Eddie has a hump on his back similar to a camel, and it's mostly fat, and so this is like an energy storage adaptation. And so it's kind of like he has a little backpack on his back with a granola bar in there in case he would need it. Now here at the farm he gets enough food, so he doesn't need to use his hump, but it's there just in case. So if his breed is originally from Sri Lanka, and if there was a time where they didn't have access to get food, then they could draw from the fat reserves in their hump.
Interesting.
And he has really super cool skin. You can see how it kind of twitches when I scratch it. But he, for whatever reason, these particular cows, because they come from a hot area, they have this ability to use the muscles to twitch their skin to get flies off. So a lot of times people think like that is kind of weird how it looks, but it's actually a great adaptation because his tail can only go so far to swish away the flies, so he can just twitch his muscles to get the flies off.
Oh, well, he looks very happy today.
He's a good guy. And then these are his companions, the sheep. And the sheep, we have 4, 3 ewes and 1 wether. A wether is a male, but he's been neutered or castrated, so they're not going to make babies. They are Katahdin sheep, which is a type of sheep that is a meat sheep. So here at Gorman Heritage Farm, some of our animals we use for our education programs, and that's what these all are for. And some of them are for production. So we do raise some animals for meat, but just not the ones that happen to be in this field right here.
Now it looks like they're chewing on something. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so typically they would all be up and crowding around and wanting attention, but right now they're resting and they are chewing their cud. And so sheep are ruminants, so are cows, and that means that their stomach has multiple chambers, and in order to digest grass, which if you or I tried to eat grass, we would, first of all, it wouldn't be an enjoyable taste, but we also wouldn't be able to digest it very well. We wouldn't be able to get nutrients out of it, but they can because they have different chambers in their stomach. The way that it goes is they eat the grass, they swallow it, they digest it a little bit, they bring it back up, so they kind of like puke in their mouth, which sounds gross, but it's very normal for them. And they just hold it there and they chew it some more, and what that's doing is it's breaking down these really tough fibrous plants to extract as many nutrients as they can. So then after they chew it for a while longer, they swallow it again, and then it moves into different chambers in their stomach, and they're able to turn something that we cannot eat, which is grass, into something that we could eat if we chose. And many people do eat beef and lamb. So yeah, they're chewing their cud.
Do you have a favorite?
Of the sheep?
Yes.
I mean, my favorite in this field might be pretty obvious, 'cause Eddie here is my buddy. But no, the sheep are great. This is Jenny. She's a year older than the triplets. Those are the triplets, Barney, Pebbles, and Bam Bam. And I would say Barney is probably my favorite. I think that's Barney over here. We're lying down. It's hard to tell from this direction. Barney, is that you? He has spots on his side. Yeah, that's you. Hi, Barn. This is Barney. He's a good guy. Hi, buddy. I know, I'm bugging you while you're doing your important digesting. I know, sorry. So, he's a good guy. They all are. They're great. They're so friendly. Typically, sheep can be a little bit leery of like groups of people just because they're prey animals and they, want to make sure that they're not threatened in any way, but these 4 are so friendly. They were all born here at the farm.
All right, Nicole, it's a little loud over here.
It is a little loud. The hens are really excited. They just got fed. So these are laying hens, meaning that they lay eggs for us. Unfortunately, a few of them haven't figured out how to get up into the caravan to lay their eggs, and so they're laying them on the ground. But this caravan, it's called an eggmobile, and it's on a wagon bed, and so it has a hitch, and we can move it with the tractor to different pastures so that they have fresh places to peck and explore and stretch their legs and wings. And then we also, of course, give them food and water. And then if we want to look in the end, they do, well, the nest boxes are on this side, so that's what those metal things are. So they go inside and lay their eggs in those nest boxes. That's the plan. The majority of them do that. This little baby pool has ash in it, wood ash, and it's a place for them to dust bathe. They like to lie in dusty places and put that on their feathers. They're also probably laying since it's morning, so a lot of that is like, I laid an egg, they celebrate. They can go up inside here. On this side, they can go up that little ramp. So they go up the ramp, and they actually get shut in there at night to protect them from any predators like raccoons or coyotes or foxes that would want to get them. And then this netting really just kind of keeps them contained. It's an electric poultry netting, but as you can see, I'm touching it. It is not electrified right now. It's not plugged in. It kind of keeps them contained, and it's also a deterrent for predators. So if a coyote or a raccoon came, they wouldn't be able to just run right up and try to get in there.
So what do you feed them?
They get fed a non-GMO layer feed, so it has all of the right minerals and nutrients for them as egg layers. They need to have a lot of calcium in their diet to make those hard shells on the egg. If they don't have enough calcium, then they can start pulling it actually out of their bones. That can be really bad for them. So it's not an organic feed. We're not a certified organic farm, but it's a really high quality non-GMO chicken feed for egg layers. These are two goats. This is Coppertone and Amelia. And Amelia is a Nubian goat, and that kind of goat makes milk. And Coppertone is actually her son. So he's half Nubian and half something else. And this is Daniel, and he's our farm assistant, and he helps take care of the livestock here. So he's going to put them in their pasture. He has a little bit of feed.
Yeah, they go crazy about corn.
Yeah, they love corn. It's like having like a cake. It's that sweet for them. And so he's moving them from where they stay at night into a place for them to graze and browse during the day.
And browse, what are they going to be eating?
So, if we have any honeysuckle, they'll go after that. Goats are awesome for clearing honeysuckle. Just any leaves that they can find, any grass. It's good for these guys to move pasture. They have parasites, so we only take them to about 3 different pastures. We don't want to infect our other pastures that we put our cows on, or where we'll put our pigs, anything like that.
Is that normal for them to have parasites? Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, go on. Good girl, Amelia. Go on, Copper. No, go on. You go too. Go ahead, pull it. No, go. Unfortunately, so if Amelia had been part of like a production flock of goats or herd, I guess a production herd, she probably would have been like separated out and gotten rid of, because she is a shedder of parasites. So even when we treat her for them, they're just so persistent within her. It's genetic. Like, she's more predisposed to that. So if we were actually raising goats like as a job, as like this is going to be our income, we would have gotten Amelia out of the flock. But because we use her for education programs and we don't raise them for meat or for dairy, she gets to stay with us, and we just have to keep them separated. They used to live with the sheep, but when we figured out that she was a persistent parasite shedder, they had to be separated out. But he's taking them to a pasture that's really steep and rocky and has like a bunch of brush and scrub and just like things that the other animals would not eat. But goats, they don't eat tin cans, they don't eat things that aren't actually edible, but they will eat poison ivy and honeysuckle and weeds and any kind of brush, and so they're gonna go in there.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about these guys?
Sure. Those are our mules. That's Tom and John. And a mule is a pretty cool animal. They're a hybrid. So their mom was a horse, a Belgian horse, and their dad was a really big type of donkey called a mammoth donkey. So they're a hybrid between 2 equine species. That means that they themselves are actually sterile. So mules can't reproduce themselves. But to make more mules, you just need to have a horse and a donkey. And Tom and John are a driving team, which means that they pull wagons together as a team. So they've been trained to work together to pull a wagon. And typically they would pull their wagon in the Reds opening day parade, and in other like Memorial Day and 4th of July parades. They also will take their wagon to day programs for people with disabilities or senior centers, because their wagon is wheelchair accessible. So for a lot of people, they wouldn't be able to climb up into a wagon, but we can just wheel them on and then they can have a wagon ride, and it's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like they're getting a little extra rest before their season starts, but hopefully they'll be pulling soon.
Yep. These are our piglets that just arrived last week. So they're pretty young. I'm not sure how old, but they're weaned, so they don't need to be with their mom anymore, but they're still pretty young. It's hard to believe that these little guys will grow up to be 250, 300 pounds by August.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're really good eaters. This is Duroc is the breed that they are, D-U-R-O-C. And so some of the animals we have here at the farm we use for education programs. They have a name and they live here through their lives. And these are part of our production. So these little guys, they don't get named, but they get really well cared for. So they have a heat lamp in the back, a nice straw to sleep in, and then they have their trough here. And once they get a little bit bigger, then they'll go out on pasture so that they can root in the mud and look for nuts and grubs and roots and make mud wallows and all that. This is our hen house. On this end we have a brooder, which is where we keep chicks nice and warm and safe while they're growing. So these chicks are probably a couple weeks old. These are more broilers. So in a little while, once they get some more feathers and grow a little more, then they'll go out on pasture as well. And when they come, they're just a little round ball, little pom-pom with legs and a little face. But within 8 weeks, they grow to the size of a full chicken that you can have for dinner. So these are part of our production birds. And then over here, we have Daniel, who's taking care of them, who you met before. And then right in here is a nest box. So this rest of the hen house is for another batch of laying hens. So we have the ones in the eggmobile that move to different pastures. And then we use these a lot of times for education programs. And they also lay more eggs. So you can see there's some eggs in here. So we have a lot of different breeds in here. Lay different color eggs. Oh my goodness, these were some chicks that hatched a school program. Boy, you guys are getting big. You're so big. Hi, friends. Hi. Well, hello. Oh, shh. This one was kind of cool because when she hatched, her foot was curled up like in a little fist and she couldn't walk. And even though it's not perfect now, the school was able to make a little splint for her so that she can walk and stand and she gets around just great. So this breed is a Cuckoo Marins. They lay a really dark chocolate brown egg. She doesn't lay yet though. It takes 6 months for a chicken to get big enough to be able to lay an egg.
And you said 8 weeks before they can be
it's a
used
different
for meat.
breed.
Different breed. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha,
they
gotcha.
grow so fast. At 8 weeks old, these layers are still like tiny babies.
Okay.
But the broilers are they're bred to grow really fast.
Beef up.
Yeah.
Nice.
Today, we have our farrier here. And the farrier is someone who specifically works on the health and well-being of horses and donkeys and equine's hooves. So they have someone who's really skilled at taking care of their feet. As you can imagine, if they're just standing on that one little toe on each leg, it's really important that their foot be healthy or else they can have a lot of problems. They can go lame. It can affect their well-being really quickly. So Stormy is a miniature donkey, and Gary here is filing his hoof and making sure it's the right angle so that Stormy has can put his weight on it at the right angle. So you don't want him to be like this or like this, and that makes sure that his joints are all healthy. And Stormy is an old guy. He's 29, so he's our oldest farm animal. And then his companion is over here with one of our awesome volunteers, Jenny. And Shorty there is not a donkey. He is a miniature dwarf horse. And so you can see his body is kind of strangely shaped. He's
He looked at you when he said that. He's like, "Who'd call him strange?"
Sorry, Shorty, but you got to admit it, buddy. And he is definitely a senior citizen as well. So he's an old guy in his 20s, earlier 20s. But
Have they been here together pretty much the whole time?
they've been here together a long time, at least 15 years. They're best buddies, so we have to give them some extra special care in their senior years here and make sure that they're really well taken care of.
How often do you need to do this to their feet?
About every 6 to 8 weeks is the general rule. It varies depending on the horse or donkey's hoof and the environment they the work that might be asked of them. So
Okay.
so we're also checking for any problems that might be starting there, beyond a pedicure.
So what kind of problem, like if there was a little infection or an abscess or just anything?
Yeah, they're very prone to abscesses, various foot rots, and just fungal issues and things.
Ah, fungal issues.
That's the constant wet, dry, environment. So
Yeah.
we're just trying to keeping those things under control. Preventive care.
That's great.
And you can't really feel that.
You can. There are nerves. There are very much nerves and blood supply to that, behind that hard shell down there. So you kind of have to know your natural guidelines and what you need to leave and what you can take. So,
Okay.
So is it similar a little bit to like our fingernail that?
Exactly, except you described it earlier. They're walking on one toenail or one fingernail, walking on the end of it. But yeah, very, very similar. So we can cut our nails too short.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that would hurt if we cut our nail too close.
Another thing I saw on our walk today at Gorman Heritage Farm was one of our plants of the week. See if you can recognize this one. Now it's just about past its prime. So these flowers won't be around much longer. Do you remember what they're called? Starts with a T. That's right, they're tulips. Good job.
Most of our animals are up in the farmyard where we just were, and we have some though down here that we use for education programs. This is Pickles. She's one of our rabbits, and her companion Leonard is in here. No, don't be all freaky. So Pickles and Leonard and these chickens are down here in their enclosure in the garden area, and we specifically take them to schools for farm to classroom programs, and we also use them for programs here when we have kids on site. Camp helps take care of them and stuff like that. So they have plenty of fresh food and water, and they have good shelter. For the nights are still pretty cool these days. Please be calm and still, be calm and still. No. They're a little out of practice because they haven't been doing any education programming. So Pickles is like, wait a minute, I have to work. So we don't raise the rabbits for meat, but sometimes depending on the age group, we'll talk about meat rabbits. We talk about using rabbits for fur. And then we also talk about, again, their manure, because rabbit manure is something that is great to put on gardens. It doesn't even have to be aged. You can put it right on the garden. It has the right balance of nitrogen for plants. So rabbit manure is a good thing that these guys contribute to the farm.